Hello, I'm going to show you an exercise in this video to help with tennis elbow. So tennis elbow being pain on the outside of the arm, outside of the elbow, coming from overloading usually of the common extensor origin of the muscles, the extensor muscles of the forearm. So these are the muscles that do this movement of the wrist, that extend the wrist. They're also very involved in stabilizing the wrist while the hand does things. So keeping the wrist kind of level and straight while the hand types, or while the hand grips, for example, gripping onto a steering wheel, or holds onto something like picking up a kettle or picking up just a cup of tea. And sometimes these movements and kind of loading activities can be a bit too much for the common extensor tissue and flare up and cause pain. Somewhat more complicated than that, but I won't go into any more details about it here. This exercise is kind of loosely based on some work by and exercises by Dr. Leanne Bissett, who's a physio researcher and specialises in elbows. And it is about isometrically loading the forearm. So this means putting the forearm extensor muscles under load where they're not contracting and causing this wrist extension movement. They're staying the same length, so they're contracting, but the wrist isn't moving. Because that type of contraction, an isometric contraction, has been shown to be quite analgesic, as in pain relieving in tendon problems, and also is kind of the most functional exercise that we can get you doing, because an isometric contraction is the type of contraction that's happening when most people are getting the pain of tennis elbow. So people usually get the pain when they go to pick something up, when they go to pick up a kettle, for example. So the muscles are contracting in this way when they're doing that type of activity. So if we can train the muscles, train the nervous system, train the tissue to be able to cope with that type of load, then doing it when you're just picking something up out of your bag shouldn't be too much. So for this exercise, what you're going to need is just a piece of TheraBand. Ideally, you'll start off with one that's quite stretchy. Usually they're the like yellow ones, and you could gradually increase it to one that's more stiff. You're going to tie a knot in the end of it, maybe a knot a couple of times over to make a little bit to grip onto. And then taking your hand, spread your fingers apart and do like a kind of Star Trek spreading, and of the middle and ring finger. And then the knot is going to go inside the palm of the hand and let the trail of the TheraBand come out through the fingers. And you can then close the palm of your hand around the knot. So the knot is then coming out of your fingers. You can use a loose grip to hold on to it. And you can do this in standing or in sitting. If you're standing, feet a good distance apart, so you've got a nice stable base of support. If you're sitting, ideally feet on the floor, so you're nice and stable. Standing or sitting up straight and tall, shoulders wide and back, shoulder blades down the back. And you can either do this holding on to the bit of TheraBand, you're just loose and on the go, or if you're going to be in the same place every day, for example, if you work sat at a desk and sat at a computer or a laptop and you have a chair and somewhere within your office workspace, you can tie this on to the side of the chair, for example. That makes an ideal exercise setup because it's right there, ready to remind you to do it. Or you can tie it onto a door handle in your kitchen, or just a door handle, or a pole or a table leg or anything, but basically somewhere that's going to be about kind of waist height when you're standing or when you're sitting. Or you can hold on to it like I am. So holding on with one hand on one side, and then you've got your hand holding onto the knot on the other side, elbow by your side, a little gap between your elbow and your armpit and your body. And then you're going to keep the wrist really straight. So don't let your wrist do this. It's your main thing you're watching out for in this exercise. Your hand and your wrist are not moving out like this. You're keeping one straight line. Elbow bent to about 90 degrees. Wrist stays nice and straight. And then you're going to just pull gently against the TheraBand to bring on a little bit of resistance. Might feel like barely anything to start off with. But just hold, pull and hold. So you're not doing this. The wrist stays straight and you're just pulling with a little bit of resistance against the TheraBand. And this will be giving you that isometric contraction down the forearm extensor muscles. Hold this for anywhere between 10 seconds up to probably a minute, going up to the point where you think pain is starting to creep up. So up until it starts to become less tolerable. Feeling it a little bit is fine, but if it starts to turn into what you would deem as pain, then relax down. And that is your baseline measure. So if you've managed 8 seconds before you go, it really hurts, then that's relatively easily aggravated, I would say. If you're managing a whole minute and you can feel it a little bit, but not that much, then you can kind of progress yourself a little bit more. So it all depends on how severe it is. Arm coming out to the side, holding it. And if you can manage, let's say 10, 20 seconds, then you can repeat that 3 times over, probably. You want to aim for, let's say, a minute's worth of loading in total. So if you're only managing 10 seconds, and this all depends on how painful it is, but if you're only managing 10 seconds, then do 3 repetitions with a bit of a weight in between. And if you can do another 3 repetitions after that without it all getting loaded up and aggravated too much, then do. But if not, just go with what feels like you've done a little bit of work, and you can gradually build on that. But if you can manage 3 whole minutes of loading and holding, and you can feel it a bit, but it's not really painful, then at that, so you can build up to that, then you can start to progress it. So then you're pulling and loading, and then we can start to what's called pronate the arm. So you're just turning the hand down. It will start to load the tissue at the elbow a little bit more. So that's your next position. You can kind of pull out and turn the hand down and still hold. And then if that feels okay, you can start to pull out and then straighten the elbow. And then maybe straighten the elbow a little bit more, and then straighten the elbow a little bit more. And once you can get to the point of holding with the wrist still really straight, very easy for it to go, so just really keep that in mind. Wrist still straight, elbow all the way out, fully extended, hand down. If you can get to this and hold this for 3 long minutes, then you're probably able to lift a kettle or to drive and to manage to do all these things without it being too painful, because that is quite a lot of loading. So hopefully that means that you've pushed past the painful bit and you're in a better place with that tennis elbow. So good luck. Aim to do it once a day or so to start off with, and you can gradually progress in those ways we talked through. All right.